ASEAN-US Special Summit began earlier today in Washington, D.C. Representatives of 9 of 10 ASEAN member states are attending the summit, which is at the White House for the first time ever.
Voice of America's Jessica Stone has been following the preparations, and she is joining us now live from Washington, D.C. Jessica, this is the first.
Good evening.
Tell us about the agenda for today, Jessica.
Well, the leaders are going to spend most of their time actually not here at the White House, but over behind me on Capitol Hill, where they'll be meeting with members of Congress. And that's a key focus because, of course, that is a key part of U.S. foreign policy. All of those leaders are accountable to the American people for where money is spent abroad. And so it's really important, Indo-Pacific leaders here in the United States believe, for the ASEAN leaders and their delegations to get to know congressional members, to help them understand the economic opportunities in the region, to help them understand the ways in which the two bodies can work together. They'll also spend a lot of time at the Commerce Department meeting with the U.S. Trade Representative, Catherine Tai, the Commerce Department Secretary, Gina Raimondo, and the U.S. ASEAN Business Council, which, of course, we have been speaking to about things like semiconductors and what we anticipate to be a Malaysian announcement that they will be working more closely with American semiconductor manufacturers to work on the supply chain shortage of those all-important chips that are in everything from our cell phones to our cars. They're now going to, they're then going to spend the evening here at the White House. They'll arrive around 5:30 local time in the south entrance, which means we won't get to see them enter the building. But they will be here for what we usually see as that family photo, that big photo that usually captures these types of meetings where all the leaders line up and take a smile and take a snap together. And we do have some breaking news to report to you as well. In just about, I believe, an hour's time, we expect the Deputy Secretary of State to meet with the Burmese opposition. And so this is one of the ways that the U.S. government is giving a nod to what's going on in Myanmar. We expect Myanmar and the conflict there and the democratic crisis there to be very much a big conversation point at these meetings. Back to you.
Okay. And then let's talk about the question of what to expect from this special summit. What are the ASEAN nations looking from Washington, Jessica?
Well, I think it's safe to say that because of what's going on in Ukraine and the amount of time the United States is working with NATO and its European partners on the Russian invasion of Ukraine, sending military hardware, sending financial assistance and humanitarian aid, that ASEAN and the rest of the Indo-Pacific really wants a reassurance from Washington that they have not lost sight of a long-term engagement throughout the region, be that security, economic, health, infrastructure, or climate change. Because remember, China is very active in the region on the trade front. They have just asked to join the CPTPP, which is the successor to the Trans-Pacific Partnership. They are leading the RCEP, which many ASEAN nations are also joining, which is the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, the largest free trade agreement in the world. And so Washington needs to show, and it knows this, that it is going to be economically engaged over a long period of time, that it's not going to just be here today, gone tomorrow, that it's going to have a long-term commitment.
Okay. And then the summit comes against the backdrop of Russia's war in Ukraine, as you mentioned before. What is Washington looking to achieve here, Jessica?
Well, it does know that it needs to send the signals I mentioned earlier, but they're also going to have a discussion about Ukraine and the significance of a sovereign country being invaded by another sovereign country, and what that portends for the national order, the rule of law, and every country throughout the world. We also expect some private discussions to occur in which Washington officials pressure ASEAN leaders to join the Russian sanctions, to join the sanctions against the oil, to perhaps divorce themselves from Russian arms, which is a very unlikely to be successful ask, of course, because Russia is a major trading partner in the region and supplies a lot of these goods. And the U.S. hasn't made any promises publicly, at least, that they're going to offset the needs that Russia is meeting in the region with respect to fuel and arms. And certainly there is a rising inflation throughout the region that the U.S. needs to discuss and address.
Okay, now let's talk about the summit location. The White House is coming under criticism from human rights groups for holding the summit there. What can you tell us on this, Jessica?
Well, Human Rights Watch, a big international human rights organization, has sent a letter to the president that it does not think it's a good idea to host these leaders at the White House, that the optics, the pictures that will come out of this summit, especially that family photo in which leaders are all present, many of whom Human Rights Watch says are repressive, are trying political dissidents in absentia, are having a number of human rights abuses, not allowing free speech, free assembly. They don't want the lasting image of this summit to be the U.S. president standing side by side with known human rights abusers. And so Sarah Yeager of Human Rights Watch has said, we really don't want the Biden administration to be inviting these countries to Washington. And we are very concerned about the message this sends to the rest of the world. She says, we also want to make sure that there's a public condemnation of human rights abuses and an encouragement of ASEAN leaders to continue to pursue democracy and to not slip into authoritarianism that seems to be taking over Asia. Those are her words. We did press Jen Psaki, the White House press secretary, about this, and I want to read you a quote from her. She says, the president has never held back in raising concerns about human rights when he has conversations with leaders where that's relevant. And this is an ASEAN meeting where all of the member nations are included and invited. And it's not an isolating type of one-on-one meeting, a state visit, she mentioned. It's an opportunity to discuss with leaders in the region a range of topics, she said, that we work together on. And White House officials do clarify that the main reason that, in particular, Cambodia's Prime Minister Hun Sen, who is very actively and internationally accused of being a human rights abuser, that he's invited because he's the chair of ASEAN, and he deserves to be invited as such because he is the chair of this organization with whom the summit is being held.